In this video, we'll be talking about vectors specifically, how to initialize them, how to add, access, and remove elements from vectors, and how to iterate through the vectors. Let's have a look at what vectors are. In C++, vectors are a dynamic array provided by the standard template library. And unlike regular arrays, vectors can change their size dynamically, allowing elements to be added or removed easily. So let's have a look at what we've got. I've only got a main method that's got a couple of comments in there and returns 0, signifying the successful completion of the program. So let's start with the beginning, where we start with initializing the array, where we will be creating an empty vectors and we're looking at integers as data type. Now, to be able to actually do something like this, so here we mentioned that the vector, here, the keyword vector is the actual class template in the STL. And this template allows us to create a class to handle any data type without rewriting the class for each type. So we can choose different data types. Okay, and then what we want to do next is give the name of our vector, which is numbers. Now, I just want to mention that for this to actually work, you do need to include the vector header. Spelt it wrong. So the vector header needs to be included in the same way that I've done here at the top. All right, now that we've created an empty vector of integers, what we want to do is add elements to the end of the vector. And for this, we're going to use a pushback method, which is available in the vector class. All we need to do to access that method is to use the name of our vector, followed by the dot, and then followed by the pushback method. So the pushback method takes an argument, and that argument would be something that's matches a data type. In this case, it's going to be a whole number or an integer. So what this will do is it'll add that value 10 to the back of the vector. Now, I'm going to choose different numbers. So they'll be added as 10, and then 20 comes after 10, 30 comes after 20. So that's pretty much it for adding elements to the vector. But here we've used the pushback method to add elements to the end of the vector. Now, when we access the elements, we can use either the operator or the at methods. Now, let's start with the operator. Let's have a look. Let me see out. I'll show you both ways. I'll write in something that goes to the user. So element at index 0. Let's just say we want to look at index 0. Now here you don't explicitly type in operator. So what you can do, you can just square brackets directly using the name of the vector. So square brackets. And here you can give the index of which you want to access. You do need to make sure something exists in there for this to work. Now, the second part, I'm going to show you how to use the at method. So element index, let's go with index 1. So in this case, we'll get rid of the brackets, and then we'll use dot to access the method. And here now we can give it the index. In this case, I'd like to access the second element in the vector. So that's pretty much it. Let's run the program. I think we do have enough code to actually compile and run. And we should be really pretty much getting the element, the first element, which is 10, and the second element in the vector is actually 20. So at this point, this is working as expected. Now let's look at removing the last element from the vector using the pop back. I'm going to copy this so I don't make any typos. And here what we will do is, so now to access this method, I would need to use the name of my vector, and I'm just going to paste. Now what this will do is it basically just removes the last element from the vector. So if I, let's go to the number 5, where we actually iterate the whole vector. We would be missing that value 30. Okay, so to cover the last point in our comment in iterating using, actually, there is one more of the size of the vector. I didn't put that in the title, but that's fine. Let's have a look at how we can traverse through the vector using iterators. So what we'll do is we will use a for loop, and we can use an iterator to traverse the vector. Now, the iterator is declared and initialized to the beginning of the vector. So that's where we start from. So we'll use initially, let me just send out a message to the user telling them what's happening, elements in the vector. So that will be displayed anyway. And then after that, we'll go into our for loop. Now over here, again, we want to initialize. What are we initializing? We're declaring initializing the iterator to point at the start of our vector. So here we will go iterator, and we'll call it it. It's a good name. And here we will use numbers, name of our vectors, and using the begin to actually make the iterator point to the beginning of the vector. So using the begin method. And it continues as long as the iterator is not equal to the end of the vector. So let's write that down in C++. So that's the English translation of what we want to do. Here we'll say, while it is not equal to numbers.end. That's pretty much it. So it continues to traverse with the last point. It will continue, but it will stop. It will only stop when it's the end of the vector. That's what I'm trying to say. And the iterator is something looks bad here. Incremented. Is incremented to move to the next element in the vector. So we'll just do ++ it. So by 1. For iterators, it is considered a good practice to use ++ it instead of it ++. And I might make a separate video on why. In terms of functionality, it's going to function the same, but in terms of a better practice and more efficiency, with iterators, this is more efficient because we don't need the value of the iterator before incrementing. Like I said, I might make a separate video on this. But for now, let's keep on going. So let's start our loop. Now, all we want to do at this point is just display the value that the iterator is pointing at. And let's print out a new line here at the end of all of this. So let's compile and run. Now we get the values 10 and 20. Notice that we don't really get 30 because we've actually deleted that element. So if I comment out this line and run this program again, we should be getting the value 30 because it's still part of the vector. So 20, 10, 20, and 30. But like I said, because we've actually deleted the last element using the pushback method, so that value 30 in our vector has been erased or deleted. All right, so the last part that I just need to get rid of some of these windows. Yep. So last part here is to check the size of the vector. If you would like to check the size of the vector, sorry, and been hitting on the M instead of vector. Numbers.size, basically that's, oh, sorry. All right, so this should give us 2 because we've only got 2 elements in our vector, which pretty much is 10 and 20. But again, if we comment out this line, then we're going to have 3 elements in our vector, 10, 20, and 30, which we get 3 elements, 10, 20, and 30. But for the sake of showing what we really said we'll do in the start of the video, we will show and demonstrate how to to the vector, how to access elements in the vector, how to iterate through the vector, and erase the last element from the vector. So that pretty much sums up our video on sort of a summary of what vectors are and what they can do. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.